do we save DeFi?
Exactly what's happening on Sonic.
Is Andre a competitor to you guys? Do you view him that way?
No, I don't think of it like that. With Shadow, what's really nice is there's no other counterparty. No matter your size, you can exit through our UI. You don't have to wait for anybody. You don't have to message in a Discord.
Have you ever disagreed with Andre?
That's a great question. There's too much trust on users, too much trust on projects as well.
If you set up a protocol where people can kind of interact with it as they please, then you have to be prepared for people interacting with it as they please.
Yeah, exactly.
What is your ultimate ambition for Shadow?
Today's podcast is brought to you by EtherFi Cash, your gateway to spending your crypto. Cash is a truly crypto-native credit card. Spend with a crypto-integrated credit card and stablecoin account, all with crypto, all hassle-free. Earn 3% cash back with perks, event tickets, and additional rewards for every purchase on your Ether.fi Cash credit card. Use the referral link for $50 cash back on your first $1,000 spent.
Up Dubai with 24 from Shadow. Super excited to have you here today. Welcome. I always like to start off with a hot take or some type of interesting question, and this is a very broad one, but broad strokes. How do we save DeFi?
Oh, exactly what's happening on Sonic. You incentivize the builders. I think FEM has been a boon for activity on Sonic, as well as attracting builders. As you can see, a lot of networks have launched since Sonic has launched, but they haven't attracted as many good quality projects and builders on the network.
Right.
And truly, I think the 90% back to builders is legitimate. A lot of people faded it, but for us, it's like maybe 5 to 10 grand a week. And at one point, we got 25,000 in one claim, right? So every week we're generating a lot of money through this, and we use it as a flywheel. But they've done a great job attracting builders, and that starts with the network. The tech is really good. It's actually tangible. It's not just transfer, circle jerk. Like, this speed's really fast. Smart contract execution actually is improved, and that means everything you're doing on chain feels faster.
For sure. I can see that number being meaningful, especially when you reach kind of a critical mass. But at the same time, there's DeFi projects that are getting, tens, 50 million, 100 million in funding, and like 5 to 10K a week doesn't seem that meaningful. Is that wrong, or do you think Sonic is targeting like smaller builders?
No, it's a function of the network. The transaction fees aren't expensive. We're an exchange, so we actually prioritize having cheap transactions or cheap swaps so that you get more volume, you get more trading activity, right? So if anything, I would say that amount of money per week is quite a bit considering how efficient we are. Like, our compiler version is the latest. We're a 2025 project. Like, we weren't built in 21. Like, we use the latest tech. We use via IR optimization. I don't want to scare you guys on the camera here with too much technical terms, but it's about a 50% improvement in gas costs, and that helps us get all the swaps we're getting. We're doing tons of volume, and as you can see on Sonic, there's quite a bit of competition for exchanges. I would say like maybe 10 to 12, and they're quality projects. They're great, but as you can see, Shadow dominates. We do 60% of the volume. We do almost 85% of the network's fees, and that's because we don't like try and game FEM. We're trying to give people the best swaps possible. So for an efficient exchange, it's actually quite a bit. So I'm very happy with that. And there's a lot of projects out there on other networks where if they were able to generate 5 to 10K a week, that could save their project legitimately.
Well, that's an interesting, you kind of mentioned it, and it is kind of a counter incentive where it's like, if I'm incentivized by the fee revenue that I'm producing, then I'm also incentivized to have high fee revenue, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think that like that obviously works in a good way in some way, but also it can be a counter incentive to make transactions more expensive for users? Do you think there's any like reverse incentive there?
Actually, I think that really doesn't matter. That's why they have the dynamic fees for gas as a network. So as an exchange, we have to prioritize efficiency. But something like Silo or a lending platform where it's just a couple of transactions, a deposit here and staking, whatever it is, they can actually increase those fees just for those small transactions. In the grand scheme of things, like 10, 20 cents isn't much. right? But it adds up over time. And yeah, it does kind of incentivize that action, but it's really up to the user to pay for it. If the user doesn't think it's worth it, so for example, Sakura, they generate quite a bit of FEM, but that's because people are enjoying the game and spending that money in the game, right? So you could see it as that, but this activity wouldn't exist if users didn't think it was worth it. So I think just it balances itself out. It might cost more if people might want to game for that or adjust or optimize for transaction fees, but that's not bad for the network at all, I don't think.
Right. And ultimately it's a free market, and really we've seen in some cases users are less like fee sensitive, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like look at Ethereum in 2021, like people were paying $100 a swap. So if it's worth it for a user to be there, they're willing to pay ultimately. So I think it's kind of a function of that. Awesome take, and I want to dive more into kind of like the DeFi component and what Sonic is doing for DeFi, what you guys are doing for DeFi. But I want to back up a little bit. What's your background?
Oh, yeah. As I was telling him earlier, I did Phantom Alerts for quite a bit, a podcast. I was in crypto since 21. I was an original Spooky Swap airdrop recipient. That really got me into things. I had a bit of Cardano at the time, but I did not touch any EVM. So I got into it. I had just graduated from my engineering degree. I was very curious about crypto. It was quite a bit. You know how it is when you first start. You go on Twitter, there's so much words and things, you're just like...
Right.
So I treated it as a hobby. I was really enjoying it. I got free money, basically. And then I started building. I started creating projects, NFTs, just, enjoying myself on the network. And just building my network with people, meeting people on Phantom. I'm bringing this up now, but back then, 21, a lot of like the major players in this space were like original users of Phantom. That DeFi wave really like was people's first experience with this stuff right after COVID.
For sure. And like people, obviously Ethereum, like the home of DeFi at first, but people fade Phantom, and it had the most robust DeFi ecosystem after Ethereum by far, And like still today, Phantom continues to have like the most novel DeFi. So like maybe some other chain has like a lot of DeFi projects by number, but they're not like DeFi innovators doing interesting stuff, doing experimental DeFi, and like Phantom has continued to be an experimental lab for that. And I think that's like sick.
Yeah, it's where people want to build. I'd love to bring this up. A lot of the times for other networks, it's VC funded. It's projects that are incentivized to build there. Sonic simply was like, we'll give you money back. We'll give you the most performant chain. And here you go. It's an open season. It's permissionless. Anyone can build here. And they're not seeding projects to come there. I mean, they are providing incentives through the airdrop. That is quite a bit, and that's a great reason to build on Sonic. I'll actually add to that later, but one of my favorite parts of those incentives is the gems. So every project gets gems to distribute themselves, and only you know your project the best. Like you can tailor these incentives as best as possible, and if you don't, you're not performing, right? So if there's two projects that are almost exact same, and Project A uses their gems a little bit better to incentivize users versus Project B, they lose. So you have to perform or you're losing out. But they just did a great job bringing people to Sonic.
That's awesome. Any other like projects that are interesting to you on Sonic? What are you excited about in the ecosystem?
Oh, that's a great question. There's quite a bit. There's some that are coming. I can't really talk about them. But any of the stuff Andre's dropping, I'm very excited for. Flying Tulip, I heard them talk about a stable as well. I'm very excited for that type of stuff. But there's a lot of smaller builders that they look like they're cooking. I don't really want to give them too much of a spotlight just in case things go awry. But I like to see experimentation. I like to see people taking, LYF yield, leverage yield farming. On V3 LPs, I think that would be awesome. Obviously, that's a bit of work. It's new, it's novel, it requires some auditing. It's a tough one. I'm trying to think specifically what I'm excited for. I really can only speak for Shadow, but I'm excited to integrate some of our tokens in these other massive projects like Pendle. We're getting a market set up for X33, Euler, a bunch of this stuff, but I'm just excited for the network in general. Nothing too specifically right now, but Yeah, just mainly excited for the things that are happening.
Yeah, we interviewed Tien actually from Pendle on this podcast previously, and like the 3.3 yield X Pendle is gonna go crazy. Like I know they kind of started out and got product market fit on like basically staking yield, but the degen DeFi yield with Pendle is the craziest concept ever. It's super sick. I think in the industry we've seen this kind of trend around DeFi, and like maybe chief among them would be kind of this sentiment around stable coins, right? Like PYUSD, like DeFi for the real world, right?
Yeah.
And then I kind of see Phantom's DeFi ecosystem as a continuation of like the 2021 like experimental on-chain degen crypto native DeFi.
Yeah.
And there's kind of two camps. You guys, I would put in the like experimental on-chain crypto native DeFi, and you're building for that, and you've always obviously had a degree of success there. But I think there's a whole other group of people that's like ultimately DeFi is going to have to kind of like eat the world or embrace the mass market. What do you think about that dynamic?
I love it. You can already see it starting to happen. I felt like with Athena really opened the gates for these delta neutral trades. People are trying to tokenize the carry trade from Japan, and a lot of the Tradfi stuff coming onto chain. And you're seeing so many yield bearing stables, even from the biggest players that are dropping. So yeah, there's two separate worlds. I like to think of DeFi as more of sovereignty. You're kind of figuring out your own money, but I still accept Tradfi. I don't mind if it's centralized. Those, as long as it's safe. I think people don't really care too much about that decentralized aspect anymore. But I'm just excited. I think that's a huge market that you can't ignore, and so many other projects are tapping into it. And even right now, I think Andre's latest stuff that he's talked about, Flying Tulip, or even the stable where it took I don't know how much I can say, but that is that aspect of it. So I'm excited. I think Andre's going to bring a lot of that Tradfi kind of volume and users onto Sonic with his new projects.
Right. And then another component of that is like TradFi incumbents seem to have been like a little bit hesitant to go deep into the on-chain stuff. Yeah, we see like a real world asset provider, maybe they're tokenizing some equities or something, but it's not like they're like looped yield farming, whatever, shadow pools or something. Do you think that that'll change? Do you think that like it's just about the maturation of the market, or do you think TradFi institutions will kind of stay away from like the degen DeFi?
I think they will, but not. They don't actually have to interact with it. From what I'm understanding, there's these yield stables that are in the background doing a lot of the degen stuff for them, and they're just simply depositing it in. I'm thinking the most high level. I can't pretend like I fully understand that aspect of it, but I'd like to think that a lot of the delta neutral stuff, like a lot of the vault stuff that is happening underlying for these yield bearing stables, like the ones that are coming to Sonic, are tapped into, I guess, stability for vaults, or they might, be on silo in the background earning. So they don't have to. They just simply hold the yield bearing stable. And I'm really liking the direction of it. Before it was like user curated. I know Athena posted like the dunes, and you could see what's happening with the delta neutral trades. But there's going to be a version of it where it's all done by smart contracts, right? So they are going to feel a lot safer knowing that this is completely automated. It's done by smart contracts. They don't have to worry about it. But I can't, I know I'm butchering this. I can't really describe it the best because it's not something I'm actively working on. But I know it's coming, and I know Sonic is attempting to get that out there.
I really mean for something like Shadow, right? Like,
yeah,
like you guys are, I don't know if like BlackRock is going to be curious about like vote escrow tokens and bribes and, that type of yield. Like, do you think that they'll come to embrace it, or do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the whole reason why we changed our whole system. Like, I love NFTs. NFTs are a figment of the past. When Andre dropped Solidly, which was an amazing protocol, at that point in time in 21, people had real belief in NFTs. They really thought they could tokenize their homes and houses and represent it by an NFT. That wasn't the case. So in 2025, today, it's just friction to use it, right? That's the main reason why we changed everything, so that you don't have to deal with any of that stuff. We took the friction out. If you're simply an institution, you look at our X33, which is just liquid staked X Shadow. You look at it as, just forget the whole VE33. Just drop it out of your mind. Forget bribes. This is a liquid stake token that's averaging 100% APR. And that's quite a bit. And that's from real yield. That's from real fees. You don't really have to tap into anything. That was the whole point of our system. We took a lot of the friction out. We took out, with X33, you don't have to vote every week. You just hold the token. You can throw it in Pendle. You can throw it in Silo. And what's awesome about that is it underlyingly still increases in yield from our shadow exchange. So you could be lending it, and every week you're still getting your rebases and voting rewards. If it ever gets to a CEX, it would be the same thing. Underlying, it doesn't matter where it is, it'll still be earning the yield. So that was the whole point, to give institution, Tradfi, retail users a way to get into the system without having to worry about it. Just as a high level, here's X33. This represents shadow. It represents the yield, how much it's making every week. And X tokens are just so much easier to deal with. We're going back to the sushi, X sushi style. Everyone knows it. It's a lot easier to deal with. And it is the whole reason why we changed things. We removed boosts from our site. We removed a lot of the friction. I think 4-year locks is extreme friction, dude. I've only made money on 3 out of like 30 of my 4-year locks.
Right. No, dude, I have like a keeper that's like, worth 1% of its.
Yeah, exactly. And what happens is, you can trade it, don't worry. There's no other counterparty. And then you have to take a massive discount to get rid of it, right? So with Shadow, what's really nice is there's no other counterparty. No matter your size, you can exit through our UI. You don't have to wait for anybody. You don't have to message in a Discord. And having an X token means that we can tap into traditional DeFi markets. You don't have to make a purposely built NFT marketplace or anything like that. We can go on Silo, we can go on Aave, we can go on Pendle, where people are actually on there, where the real liquidity is on there. And that's our kind of making things a little bit more digestible for people. Here's X33, here's how much it earns, here's it on a traditional lender, here's it on a traditional, DeFi platform that everyone's used to. Sonic actually sees the value in that as well. That's why they gave us activity points for that asset. So we're really trying to push on that. So soon, probably when this video comes out, the Pendle market will be ready and live. We're working on a Euler lending market as well. I'm just excited. It's just a great way to kind of high level black box. Don't think about what the hell V33 is or bribes or voting incentives. You see X33, you see an exchange that is top 4 in holder revenue of all exchanges, and you just want to get into that. All right, I'm holding X33. That's it.
So you kind of like abstracted it away, and there's still like the DeFi game component for those who want to play it. But then if you just want to like hold kind of like a more traditional style token that you don't have to worry about, that exists for those type of participants as well.
Exactly.
Interesting. Very cool. How do you think about like the competitive landscape? Obviously, like, well, 2 questions here. The first one is like the exchange landscape within Sonic. The second one is like all the Solidly forks that have done varying things outside of Sonic. And then the third one that I'm curious about is like the relationship with Andre himself, right? Like he's building products that are both collaborative and competitive to your product. How do you think about all these players?
Oh yeah, let's go one by one. All right, so first the competition on Sonic was fierce, and that's because it was such a great network for people to build on. Like you got the Algebra forks, you got the Trader Joe DLM style forks, you got the Solidly forks, you got the traditional Uniswap V3 forks. So first of all, they did a great job attracting all of that, right? But we are just about performance. And this brings us back to our revenue. So we never gave our team tokens. We have a voting position just like the rest of us or rest of the users, and we earn from that, right? So we also want to perform for our own sake, right? So we're constantly checking the markets. We're checking to see how much fees are getting generated. I actually have an app that our developers built that just pings me oh, hey, you need to gauge this. Oh, your fees are dropping on this compared to this other competitor. And we're constantly very, very competitive. So we're making the dynamic fees more dynamic if required. We're putting more incentives to pools that might be getting, for lack of a better word, vamped by other exchanges. So our goal is to perform, and we will never stop performing for our own sake and for the user's sake. So when you put yourself in that same position as a user and the people that you're trying to attract, we're all working for each other, right? So in that case, that's how we became dominant, because there's so much competition. We still do 60% of the volume, and we do like most of the fees. So in that case, boom. And then the second question.
Actually, give me one second. I want to follow up here.
Yeah.
The idea of performance for an exchange, like obviously you're managing multiple stakeholders. You have your token holders, you have LPs, you have people playing the DeFi ecosystem, you have people making swaps. Like, what is performance, and how do you manage all these trade-offs between these stakeholders?
Yeah, so Andre Cronje, when he did Solidly, he like solved the incentive alignment. Before it was a little bit weird. I really like Airdrome's triangle graphic they use, where, on one end, traders, they get liquidity from the liquidity providers, and then the traders provide fees to the token holders, and the token holders provide emissions to the liquidity. So you can just see it's clearly like a circle. And there's been times in the past, especially with early Uniswap, where it was just liquidity trader, and then the token just, for lack of better words, just messes off. I was gonna cuss, but but yeah, there's nothing for the token holders. So I felt
or the LPs for that matter in some kind of context in Uniswap.
Yeah, exactly. So I love that model, but what we didn't like about that models, and what Andre probably didn't like himself, I saw his tweets. He said 4-year locks is way too long, but access to incentives was completely unfair for users. In order to get the full benefit of being a token holder, you'd have to lock for 4 years. And that is only plus EV for the protocols. It takes that out of circulation, 4 years, no matter what, you're gone. So in my humblest opinion, I don't like 4-year locks. I hate it. I have PTSD. I would rather not lock you for 4 years. I would rather give you stronger incentives to stay. And I use this analogy all the time. I invite you to a party. You have a great time at the party, right? And I tell you, okay, we're having another party tomorrow night. I can sounds ludicrous when I say it, but it's going to click for you guys. I can lock all the party goers into the house and say no one can leave until tomorrow's party. Or B, I can give you guys a nice goodie bag and say, listen, there's more if you come tomorrow.
Yeah.
I don't even have to break that down. That's ludicrous to hear.
You're stuck here for 4 years. You're stuck at the party for 4 years.
Yeah, like the party's going to die. Or what if I tell you, hey, you can leave this party, but we're going to have to amputate 2 of your legs to go, or something like that. Just something crazy to get out of there, so you're stuck there. Yeah, so when you hear that analogy, it really clicks as to why our system is working and why people are pricing our instant exit fee a lot better than the 4-year lock, because like I said, there's no counterparty. You can exit at any time. There's been times where our X33 token is traded at extreme premium at like 90% of shadow, when in actuality, if you think about it inherently, if the redemption is 50% of the value, how's it trading at the premium? It's because the market was valuing the yield at that time more than the fee or the exit fee. And 4-year locks just suck. I just hate them. I'm gonna keep hating on them. But the goal with Shadow was to take that friction out. That is extreme friction for liquidity providers, token holders, everyone. So imagine, not only do I have to lock for 4 years to get any incentives, as a liquidity provider, people would have to lock for 4 years to then get their boosted rewards. Remember that? People have already dropped that, but that was an issue in the past where I have to lock for 4 years just to get the full my full liquidity's emissions, right? That's just crazy. I didn't like that. I didn't like anything friction-wise, and that's a part of the reason why Solidly never, at least some of the other forks never really got traction, because it was a lot difficult.
Right. It's almost like you guys are treating like token or yield as a product, you know, and you're trying to like reduce a friction. People don't talk about frictions around tokens very much. You know, they talk about friction around UX or something, but they don't talk about it around like a financial asset. But you're almost treating it as like a product, or fee revenue as a product. The second kind of competitor set that I was curious about how you think about is like the solidly fork universe, right? Like notably Aerodrome, Velodrome. There are obviously many others out there.
Yeah. Actually, this is quite near and dear to my heart. I've been a solidly power user since Andre made it. So everyone that came out, whether they did well or not, the idea that I could potentially make quite a bit, you know, if I lock these tokens was always there. And then I started, I think after Aerodrome, you know, did pretty well on that. I was farming it pretty early. But then at some point, as a user, you start to think, man, if I could do this differently, I would do this. It really started, we weren't intentionally going to make Shadow. It really started off as just a joke conversation when they announced the Sonic upgrade. We were going to call it Sonically as a joke. And then the more we talked about it, we're like, oh, I hate the NFT. What purpose does it serve? Nothing. And obviously people that have built their solidly projects on that notion of the NFT are obviously going to LARP as much as possible about how great it is, right? But maybe you can message the creator and ask him, you know, why'd you do that? And he'll most likely say at that time, NFTs were quite important, right? So we take that bias of, you know, treating this code base as God's gift to the earth, which honestly it is. But if you're not able to conceptualize how I can improve this, and instead are trying to justify the decisions instead of making the changes, that's why it stagnated. It just people just kept taking Andre's work, repeating it. And it was great. It was a great model, but you have to push it forward. Right. You have to add something different. And I brought up all the friction stuff was a main proponent of why we made those changes. And yeah, dude, you just got to make some changes. And I noticed, like, I can only say a couple did well. And that's either because they chose the right network. Right. They had good BD. They had good marketing. It wasn't like they did anything different with the code base. Right. And that's why I'm happy with Shadows, because not only do we have those other intangibles, but we provided a different, unique product. Right. And it's something that we're still communicating to users and trying to educate them on, since it is a little different. Even stuff like our website, we're revamping it just to make it a little bit easier for people. X33 deserves its own page with all the stats and everything. Right. But yeah, no, we're just working to build a good product. And even the traditional exchange stuff, like if you see our concentrated liquidity mint page, you can see the liquidity distribution like a typical CEX order book, as well as the price over 7 days overlaid on top, right? So we care about everything beyond just the solidly part of it and the VE33 or X33 as we call it. We care about the actual exchange experience, right? So when we initially launched, I think late December, early January, we were just a CL DEX. We didn't have the token, and we were starting to kill it, right? And then when we switched to the token, it takes a while to kind of ramp it up. So we lost like half of our TVL because people preferred the fees at the time. But then as the token, built up, we got that back. But I bring that up only to say that we focused on the experience, the CL experience. I don't think there's a better CL mint page out there in this world or in DeFi. No one wants to see not in this case, vertical liquidity distributions. It's not used anywhere else. We want to look at it as like a typical order book, but we care about the user experience dearly. And we don't just do things just because it was done before. We're doing it because we're taking every single thing without bias, and we're like, hey, can we improve this? All right, no. Can we improve this? Everything you can think of, we attempted to improve. Like even the UniV2 swap math, like we changed the formula so that it's just a little bit more performant, right? You can improve the observation, and it's something that Andre actually is doing on Flying Tulip. I keep bringing up Andre, but I'm very thankful for him and the position he put us in. He put many others in with his initial code for everything. Even Yearn, everything he's built has been kind of like he's not just like I'm gonna just release this because it's worked out on other networks. He's really pushing, and if it wasn't for his work and his code base, like many of us wouldn't be here. Even just from the Phantom sense, where you started on Phantom, and I see all these founders like on Barachain or this network, Layer Zero, wherever it is, and they're like, oh yeah, Phantom's where I got started, right? So we're all very thankful for him, and I just wanted to, while the cameras was rolling, to give him kudos, because I don't think people do that enough on camera.
No, like Andre's crazy influential. We had the privilege to sit down with him. Like he's a genius, 100%. He's controversial, but he's also like insanely influential. Probably one of the most influential people on DeFi of all time. But I do want to talk about what you mentioned around Flying Lotus. Like, is Andre a competitor to you guys? Do you view him that way?
No, I don't. I don't think of it like that. If you look at like a Hyperliquid, they do have spot, but it's more the perps volume, and you can see his website. The content is comparing to traditional CEXs and stuff like that.
Right.
But there's more than just that aspect of it. Like the stable token potentially could use Flying Tulip for the delta neutral trade, and there's so much cool stuff that anybody who thinks something is a competitor, they're wrong. I think that he'll bring so much more action to the network with a new product. We've seen it. His last one was solidly the big one, $3 or $4 billion to the network like that. So it would be a boon for everyone. But I don't see it as a direct competitor at all. It provides two different services. Obviously, it does have spot. It has to have liquidity. But even the dynamic LTV that he was talking about doesn't exist anywhere. Like a lot of the situations that I think the Hyperliquid one with was it Per or something like that? Something weird happened there.
Right.
And he said, oh, if this was on Flying Tulip with dynamic LTV, this wouldn't have happened, right? So how can that be a competitor to us? Like I think it's going to be great for the network, and I'm actually quite excited for it.
Yeah, you see like the network growth effects as superior than any like competitive effect. Yeah, interesting. I know like I actually talked to Aerodrome. They were like one of the first podcast guests. I've obviously talked to Andre. And I think a lot of people who are kind of into the solidly like DeFi fork ecosystem kind of believe it's like the best model. My question to you is like, you guys are the most successful exchange on Sonic. How much of that do you attribute to like the solidly model? How much do you attribute it to the team that you guys have made, and how much do you attribute it to like kind of the incentives that Sonic has provided for you guys?
That's a great question. I don't want to put percentages on it, because I think that's asinine. That can change at any time.
For sure. Yeah.
One day I might wake up and say, think it's all the team, it's all this, it's all that, but a lot of it is the incentive alignment. A lot of people forget it. It's why these projects can scale at mass, because when the token goes up, it boosts everything in the ecosystem, in that token ecosystem. So I say quite a bit to that token model, and I'm going to thank Andre again for creating such a decent way to incentivize everybody, right? But part of it is BD, a part of it is marketing, a part of it is branding, a part of it is education for sure. That's very important. So I can't say what or which or what, but quite a bit of it is to both of those, I would say, because without the incentive alignment and the actual design at the most highest level,
like the fundamental solidity model,
quite a bit, but. You still need a team to push it. You still need to market it. You still need to, integrate with other projects and do the BD and do whatever's required. So I can't say a percentage, but quite a bit. Quite a bit.
So you would say the most important factor is actually like the model, the solidly model itself. Interesting. Speaking of that, like I think the solidly model was kind of openly recognized as flawed at the beginning, and then obviously different people have kind of made their own kind of like marginal improvements along the way. How do you think about that? Like, that dynamic, I guess, like, and the fact that like solidly, like Andre had his vision of solidly and he was very opinionated on it, and then the fact that you guys have kind of had to evolve and make your own opinions around what solidly is. Or have you ever disagreed with Andre?
I mean, I talk to him here and there, not as much as I would love, but we ask him for so much advice, and he's always responding. and giving us advice, at least on some of our decision making. But you know what? That's a great question. Would you consider solidly flawed? The only thing I could say that was done wrong was trusting, projects and users because it was permissionless. And when it comes to anything that is remotely connected to emissions or any yields or anything where you could make money, having it permissionless does suck because people are going to take advantage. It's human nature. It is what it is. And part of I would say it wasn't flawed. Was it flawed when it did well on base and optimism? No, there's too much trust on users, too much trust on projects as well, where that whole initial idea of giving VE NFTs to projects, in hindsight, that was great for those projects. Those ones all boomed. I'm sure you saw their prices once they got announced. You were around then. That's great, but these projects don't deserve these NFTs. Let's be honest. We're trying to subsidize partnerships and getting projects to build on us, but we don't need to do that. All we have to do is target more emissions than revenue, slightly above, so that people are wanting to use. We're providing a service, right? You're getting emissions in a different token than your token, and that's enough to get people to build. So I don't think it was flawed at all. I just think there's too much trust in people and projects, and even the ones that oh man, this might be a little bit spicy, but for example, a project, have you heard of the Byte Masons? Reaper
of
Farm?
course, yeah.
They received a free V NFT, and instead of giving it back to users, the yield like everyone else, they tokenized 2 shitcoins that they owned 100% of the supply to and sent the emissions to. How can you solve that? That's permissionless. Yeah. You can't control somebody just being an idiot, right? So in that case, we've learned from that where we're anything that's permissionless and it is involved with money, we can't allow it to be permissionless. It's just people are shitty. It is what it is.
Well, I think that that's what I bring up to with as a flaw is given a set of given an immutable protocol and understanding that people are going to kind of be self-interested around emissions or whatever. And that was the game that they were playing, was just an emissions game, is that that's the game that was played. And if, in my opinion, if you set up a protocol where people can kind of interact with it as they please, then you have to be prepared for people interacting with it as they please.
Yeah, exactly. So, and we're still learning. We're still adding stuff. For Shadow, there was a project that we gauged, and we do have gauge guidelines, and we do have how much you can provide as vote incentives. But there was a project where, let's say the limit was the max they could bribe was 5,000. They would bribe 36,000. I'm like, oh, whoa, don't do that. Then the next week, maximum's 10,000, and they bribe 26,000. And we just added clawbacks to those vote incentives because, again, people still can't be trusted, even if they're vetted, even if they built on every exchange and everyone says they love them and they're the best person ever and they never sell. You still can't trust them. So we just put in the measures to protect ourselves and just build a good product. Because all you can do is build something and, hope for the best, but people aren't always the best. And that's just something we did with Shadow everywhere. So you can't really take advantage of the system since it's designed to incentivize fees. And that's another thing I want to bring up too is previously solidly modeled exchanges focus on bribes. They focus on the vote incentives from projects, right? That was most of their revenue. That's wrong. That's completely wrong. It needs to be from fees. Your number one priority needs to be productive liquidity. And that's something we LARP on so hard. I hate to use LARP, but we focus on quite a bit where we want our liquidity to be the most productive, right? About 80-90% of our weekly rewards for the vote rewards is the fees. And that's just because the liquidity is as productive as possible with dynamic fees. Not to mention the FEM is powering our MEV bots. We have privileged MEV bots that can make these trades before external arbitrage bots where we can. When I say privilege, I'll explain it here. Where atomically in the same swap our transaction, it can set the fee to a certain level, do the swap, set it back. So that does what that allows us is. Those other R bots can't make that same trade. So, let's say, for example...
It's keeping the fee revenue internal.
Exactly. And it's something we want to push to the rest of the the network, and we want to do cross-chain arbitrages into Sonic because a lot of it is toxic out, and that's how it is when a network just starts. You don't get that MEV and arbitrage set up, but that's thankful to Sonic Labs. Like this VM stuff, we can spam our dynamic fees every 1 to 5 seconds. Typically on other networks, 30 minutes they'll change the fee, right? So by being able to change the fees that often, because we're getting 90% of the fees back, it allows our liquidity to be the most productive it can be. So it's a function of the MEV, the dynamic fee spam, and because of that, majority of our actual yield is fees, right? So that's great fundamentals because bribes can disappear. Project can get mad and just be like, I'm done. You might have waves of up and down when it comes to that, but one of the reasons why we've done really well, even with the recent pricing and the market downturn, was the fundamentals were there. We're still earning quite a bit. We're still top 3, top 4 holder revenue for all exchanges. And the guys above us are billion-dollar projects like Hyperliquid, Aerodrome, Jupiter. We're not as big for sure. So to have those sort of numbers for our holders, it's been a great thing. And that's something you got to focus on, the fundamentals. Fees and emissions and I don't want to bring up emissions, but fees and the volume and things like that are the fundamentals you need to focus on.
One of Andre's kind of core principles was immutability, and we saw this with Keeper, Fix Forex, Yearn to some extent, definitely solidly. You guys continue to kind of maintain the ability to work and evolve and produce new versions of the product. Do you think you'll ever get to a point where you can kind of enshrine the protocol, or is it always going to be kind of a dynamic model?
It's something that we struggled with, so we ended up doing a hybrid kind of setup where any of the pools, anything where user funds are touching is immutable. However, we were really on the fence, and this is something I asked Sonic Labs team members about. I asked Andre about, a lot of discussion here and there, and I ended up capitulating. We were really going to go 100% immutable, right? 100% immutable, and we realized we can't do that. For example, our voter is upgradable, right? And that's where we added the bribe clawback, right? If we had that immutable, technically that could be considered a denial of service. Maybe you think this guy's really nice, but he decides to bribe $2 million. It's really just you can't control that, right?
Right.
So you need some sort of upgradability. Just as a business, you evolve, you grow, and immutability is great, and it doesn't seem as important as it used to be, right?
Well, honestly, the attitude has changed, I think.
Yeah.
The OG DeFi builders were all about non-upgradable contracts, complete immutability. And now people really don't harp on it as much.
Yeah, so for us, about 90% of our contracts are immutable. It's just the ones that we want to grow with, or maybe we want to change. But we've made our immutable stuff very modular. We can change the fee splits of every single gauge specifically. We can go to X Shadow to voters. We even set up something for memes soon where we give fees back to them, and they can set it up for creator fees or liquidity incentives, lottery. And that's because we're really granular on what we can do. We can actually change our emissions from X Shadow to Shadow. We can change this percentage, and that's all within our immutable contracts, right? So that's fine in that sense. It's just some of the core stuff like voter and the other contracts, they need to be upgradable because you never know, where things go. In 3 years, we want to keep these contracts, right? Potentially, or maybe we could do a migration, but we'd rather not. We'd rather have the core stuff upgradable and just go from there. And if there's something that changes in 5 years, we don't know narratives, and we don't know what's going to be important in 5 years, 2 years, 1 year. But we will be prepared for it. And wherever the market leads us, we'll go. We're quite adaptable. And we're not just going to jump on every train AI, shadow AI guys, or, shadow RWA. I don't mean it like that. What I mean is there's going to be some cool things that are going to be done for exchanges that we want to be privy to and be able to upgrade to in the future. We've already started thinking about our next iteration with hooks, like even the fee share thing I taught you about, or as I mentioned. If we had like UniV4 hooks, it would be a lot easier to implement. And even just the underlying liquidity in lending markets via hook, it'd be easy to implement. So we're already thinking about that ahead of time. I don't want to, like, that'd be a lot of audits. Actually, we spent our current code base in total is about 800,000 in audits.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so that's one thing as well. Like, you could tell we were serious about this from the jump. We've been building this for almost 2 years, I think. Just the idea, well, okay, not almost 2 years, like a year and a half, but just the idea and the conception and the audits and, got for the core contracts audited by consensus diligence. We did a code for Arena as well. We did Spearbit as well. And a bunch of small engagements as well as an upcoming bug bounty. Once that's announced, it'll be announced. But yeah, we care a lot. We care a lot. And I'll be honest with you, if there was an exchange on Phantom and Sonic that I felt was worthy of the network, we wouldn't have built Shadow. But at that time, I wasn't happy with the experience. I wasn't happy with the experience with Spooky Swap, with Equalizer. And if you have a performant network and you're still using 21 technology in terms of websites and having so much state bloat,
right?
It's not good. What are you going to accomplish? It's going to feel slow. We have issues here and there. That's just because Sonic has insane output and throughput, like so many entities. We're actually upgrading to the most performant subgraph and index server with NVO as well as like some RPC calls. But the core website is so much faster. Like something that would have taken in maybe like 2,000 lines of code, it's like 150 on Shadow. So we didn't half-ass it. Okay, let's say you make like good core contracts and the website shit, give up. If you make a good website and your contracts is shit, give up. I hate to cuss, but I'm very adamant about finishing the job fully. You know what I mean?
It's funny, when we talked to Andre, he was like, yeah, dude, like at this point, our issue with Sonic, like speed is the website or the wallet, it's not actually the network itself. So it's
no, he's not lying, dude. I bring it up to him. Oh my God, dude. So when we deployed and were testing Shadow, there's like early on, like on the test net, there's something we needed. So we just deployed on Arbitrum, I think, or Avalanche. I think we might have done each. And just putting the site there and the contracts there made it so much slower. And then when we brought it back to Sonic, I had to turn down the polling interval for transaction receipts to like nearly nothing. And it was like so much faster. And like, yeah, the sites will catch up. All the other projects will catch up eventually. But it was something we focused on because what's the point of a performant network if the website still feels like it's slow?
Right. Yeah. No, I understand the sentiment completely. Yeah. We're running out of time, but the last question I want to ask you is, what is your ultimate ambition for Shadow?
Dude, I want people to never leave the Shadow site. Right now, we just added a bridge to it. In the future, we're going to add a token launcher with our fee share system built in. So if you create a token, like a pump fund style token, you can get potentially up to 20% of your fees as creator fees. We're going to see if we can separate the use cases. Like you can do creator fees or liquidity rewards, lottery, whatever. We saw how Solana was really capturing the retail meme market. We're not going to try and force it. It has to be organic, but we want the infrastructure to be ready. I still think EVM is the best.
Right.
So we have like a bunch of upcoming catalysts, website, and as you saw recently, we just got put onto Binance Alpha. And it looks like the network's heating up. Like in the last 2 days, the on-chain network revenue times 2.5 or something like that. It increased quite a bit. And we're a lot of that. We're like 88, 90% of that. So I'm quite excited for the future and like a lot of the catalysts we have, website updates. But I don't want people to leave Shadow. Just go on the Shadow bridge. And it's becoming like the hub. It's becoming the hub where, dude, anything you want to do, you can do on this site. And that's my end goal.
Phenomenal. Awesome. Thanks so much for your time today. Super stoked to have you here. It was an absolute pleasure chatting with you. Time flew by. So excited for what you're building and excited to check out more DeFi on Phantom.
Thank you so much.